Hey everybody, welcome to our next episode of the Rap Thought Podcast. This week, we will be touching on RTJ4, Run the Jewels, which if you haven't heard, which you should by now because it's the fourth album, this is a album between Killer Mike and LP. They've been working together for a long time, ever since it was Killer Mike's 2010 album.
2012.
2012 album?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rap music.
Rap music. I thought it was 2010, my bad.
Yeah, so they have a bit of history together, starting in 2012 when LP produced that whole album. And it's kind of an unusual pairing. You wouldn't think to pair LP's production with Killer Mike's rhyming on paper. Before that album, you wouldn't think of that. LP, has been around since the early to mid 90s.
Been around for a minute.
For a
and
long
Killer
time.
Mike for that too. He debuted on Outkast's Stank on Your album, which also dropped in early 2000s.
And LP started off with a group, and they put out a classic album, Fun Crusher Plus, and it's very much grimy, gritty, underground New York hip hop. I would say it's very different than the sound of Run the Jewels, where it's very crisp, clean, loud. His production before was very dark and eerie and, like I said, grimy and raw. But he's super talented as a producer. I think he's extremely underrated in that regard.
He's got talent.
He's got talent. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with his solo work and with his company Flow hip hop group.
I've heard of a couple of his albums. The Wake Me When It, or
I'll Sleep When You're Dead.
I'll Sleep When You're Dead, right?
Yeah, I love that album. That's the album that I first got into LP, and it's very dark. It's emotional. He talks a lot about a lot of different things in that album, and it's always resonated with me. And then I went back and listened to Company Flow, and I love those albums as well because I like that style of hip hop. I like the dirty, grimy sound. It's almost parallel to Wu-Tang in their sound, just with how raw it is.
I'd have to give it another listen. When I first heard that album, it didn't impact me in any type of way to where I wanted to keep rewinding it. But then, your taste in music absolutely evolves over the years. Mm-hmm. So if I listened to this album 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or however long it was, I should listen to it again.
Yeah.
I'm sure things have changed.
I really didn't get into Killer Mike until he did the album, until LP produced rap music with him. That was the first time I listened to a Killer Mike album because I was such a huge LP fan. And I loved his production. So I was really excited to listen to that album. And then when they made the first Run the Jewels, I was excited as well. But I have to say, I haven't been the biggest Run the Jewels fan. It's always been like, oh, I think that's dope. Like, I think it's cool. I love LP. Killer Mike's amazing. But I was never on the train of, I fucking love Run the Jewels and they're, amazing.
If I'm going to look towards a group where I'm not looking for lyrics, but I want to hear talent and I want to hear dope beats, I'm listening to Run the Jewels. So even in doing this week's podcast, I didn't politically, they do touch on a couple things, but for me speaking, I didn't go into this album hearing a whole lot of it. It was still like their last three albums. I'm like, yeah, I'm listening to this to kind of, hear music. Mm-hmm. And that's mostly what I heard with this one, but I still really liked it. This one might be, if not my first, it's probably my second favorite. Yeah. I can't remember which. I think the second one's my favorite.
This is definitely my favorite Run the Jewels album. To me, it's very focused. All the songs fit together really nicely. It's not too long. All the features are great. I definitely get a sense of a loose concept around the album. Mm-hmm. I like all the other Run the Jewels albums. They're great. but none of them really grabbed my attention where I wanted to replay them all the time. It's like I would listen to them 2 or 3 times and then I'm kind of done.
I'm listening to them at the gym and,
Yeah.
when people are over. I think those are the best times to hear them.
Yeah, I don't know why they just never grabbed me in that way where I was, blown away by them. I was just like, yeah, this is great, but I'm not standing this in any way like a lot of other people are.
I mean, maybe I'm being literal, but I'm kind of going off of, being blown away. I was like, yeah, I can't really say that I've been blown away by their content. But at the same time, like from front to back, I love their albums because if I'm just looking for entertainment, I don't have to. There's not a whole lot of songs I'm skipping over. Have you heard "Meow the Jewels"?
Yes,
What did you think of that?
I thought it was hilarious. I think it's dope. I love cats, so.
It's fucking weird, dude.
But yeah, first and foremost, I'm an LP fan. Killer Mike obviously is amazing, and the way he raps is extremely powerful. And when he raps about something, you listen to it, and you can understand every single word he's saying. He's very talented in that way.
I agree with that. And as we go through this podcast, I'll just say it now that I personally feel that a lot of what LP says goes over my head. And this the thing is, like, I'm not sure. Like, when we talked about, I'm not sure why. When we talked about Shabazz Palaces, I said that their stuff went over my head because their lyrics are very poetic and abstract to where you really have to decipher what they're saying. LP, on the other hand, for me, I feel like he has a knack of throwing a bunch of words together to make a rhyme and to make it sound like, man, that dude just dropped a bunch of bars. Like, he rhymed his ass off. That's what I get out of LP. Do I still like him? Yeah, he's still great. But his lyrics don't settle with me.
It's a very different style than Killer Mike, which is why it is a dope group, because they contrast each other in so many ways.
Yeah, and it just had me thinking, I think this pod will be cool because like you said, when Killer Mike talks, I'm understanding everything that he's saying, and I'm like right there with him. LP loses me a little bit, and I feel when I listen to their music, I'm like, okay, LP is kind of I don't want to say filler, but like he's just kind of there doing his thing. But if I'm looking for what the song's talking about, I'm listening to Killer Mike. If I want to understand where LP's coming from, I can listen to his lyrics a few times or read the lyrics. But Killer Mike is very to the point, and and I've said that over a few times. Like, I like that in my music. If you're going to be a bunch of rhymes and everything, at least be straight to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's get into it. The first track is Yankee and the Brave, episode 4. So right off the bat, just reading the title, it kind of sets you up for the concept of the album, of it being a TV show, like an action TV show. And the main characters are Killer Mike and LP, the Yankee and the Brave. Yankee being LP because he's from New York, Brave being Killer Mike because he's from Detroit. From Atlanta, the Atlanta Braves. So, that's the name of their characters. And it also kind of plays on Pinky and the Brain, the cartoon.
Oh, that's funny.
And their goal to dominate the world.
What's cool is it ends on this note too.
Right.
Like, as you said, this is kind of a looser concept album. Like, everything just kind of flies around and it's here and there, but they do touch on a couple things throughout tracks. And this is one of those where it's static and it starts here and it ends on this note.
So the first track, it's, your quintessential hard-hitting, in-your-face intro track. It's loud, the drums are in your face, and they're just spitting on this. I loved Killer Mike's verses. I thought he went in.
I just put down, they're hip hopping in this one.
Yeah.
And it's weird because some of their tracks, they start off, like, the first verse could be random, and then once it gets to the second verse, it starts going into a story that then they finish. So I thought that was really interesting. So the first one, like, they're just talking whatever else. They're dropping bars. But then the second one, Killer Mike almost opens up and is saying, like, hey, it's me versus the cops that are outside. I got a bullet left. I could save it for I could shoot one of them, or I could save it for myself, but it won't be suicide. And it kind of reminds me of today's climate, but then not, but just like the me against the world kind of thing. And
Yeah,
then-
it's definitely a reference to, I think, to Christopher Dorner, where he, was in a police standoff in a house, and he ran out of ammo, and he killed himself. But the news could lie and say, that he shot himself, and not, the cops could have shot him. We don't know. They could just say, oh, he committed suicide, but they could have came in and shot him. So it references that, and it's pretty heavy stuff. But then it kind of ends where it's kind of like a
it's
TV
a positive
show.
note.
Yeah, where he has to escape. LP helps him escape. They're like, it's like the intro to a TV show. The cold open or whatever, where it's just them in a crazy situation. They got to escape, and then the story continues.
It's funny because LP gives him some words of, not like words of motivation, but you feel like at the end of Killer Mike's verse, he's on the verge of like, yeah, I'm just gonna have to kill myself because it's not suicide, but this is the only way out. The cops are not going to get me. I'm
Right.
too stubborn for that. But then LP kind of comes in and is like, nah, man, like, I need you here. Like, we got this. We can do this. And then the Killer Mike kind of is just like, yeah, man, like, I guess, yeah, forget about shooting myself or messing with the cops. Like, I'm just going to retreat and we'll come back another day and resolve this. So in the end, he does that. And the line that they leave off with is don't mean any harm, but we truly mean all the disrespect. And I feel like that can be taken for so many different levels. It's like in today's climate, like it's saying we don't mean any harm. Like we're just here to open up views and we don't want to offend anybody. But yeah, we mean disrespect if you are so into your view, so deep into
Right.
your views and
If
your
you
mindset.
feel disrespected by what we're saying, we want you to feel.
We
that
want
way.
you to do it. Fuck you.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah. So the next track is Ooh La La. And this is one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Oh, it's
I
the
love
best,
the beat.
It is the best track on the album.
Yeah. The beat's amazing. LP killed it.
This is where I'm beginning to be like, I'm wondering if DJ Premier is my favorite producer.
Right. Well, he didn't produce this. He just is
It was
featured
just
on it.
Featured on it.
He
I
did
thought
the
had some.
cuts. But I agree with you that LP did kind of make it sound like a Premier beat. But yeah, I love this beat. I love the way they're flowing on it. I love the bounce to it. Yeah, I thought LP went crazy on this song.
Yeah.
One of his verses that I really like is I can hear them from the block, see them creeping through the fog. Season's greetings, now feeding season can start. Oh my God, look alive, looking like I live life in a crooked line. Doing fine, you want maximum stupid, I am the guy. So
He
just
briefly talks about warmongers and corruption in this track, which was interesting because the track is so up tempo, you kind of don't really expect anything. But I have to say, my favorite part was when Killer Mike, in his last verse, he talks about preferring Joker over Batman, and it's the last couple verses, but it makes you think a little bit because you think about like, well, Batman's the savior of the city, but Joker is the one. Did you watch Joker, by the way? The new one?
yeah.
It's an awesome movie. And it's the Joker I don't want to spoil anything, but I mean, it's the Joker basically getting a group of people together as a mob. It's kind of like what's happening now with Black Lives Matter. It's bringing people together to fight for a cause. So as he's talking about how he's preferring Joker over Batman, it's like, we don't need someone to come and save people. We need to start getting together and inciting change through really
Yeah.
getting at people and getting, changing minds,
Making noise.
making some noise and getting people's attention. So I was like, man, that's on another level right there. I really had to think about that. Like just bringing up two different characters and wondering what he means from their backgrounds in relation to what's happening today. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, really dope track. I loved it. This is, it's a really creative song, the way it sounds. and I loved how LB produced it. Yeah. And then the next track is Out of Sight, featuring
With 2
Chainz.
2 Chainz, formerly Teddy Boy.
Yeah. It's a cool song. It's not my favorite. I enjoyed it. I love that Killer Mike and LP traded back and forth a lot. They traded lines.
Not
in the
that's not
beginning
even
of
the
song.
first track or the only track that they do.
Right.
That, which is
I love
cool.
that they do that. It's not as common as it used to be. Back in the 80s and early 90s, groups did that a lot, which I really enjoy. But yeah, some great lines in here. Bitch, we cool as penguin pussy on the polar cap peninsula, colder than your baby mama heart. When she find out you've been fucking with that other broad and you ain't got the rent for her. Like, just funny lines, dude. Like, it's so creative and paints a really funny picture.
Yeah, this is a lot going on, but I like there's just certain lines in this song that make you think of other things. So he mentioned dying at your prime when involved with drugs. And it just made me think of people that are doing things to survive, or the only thing that they can do because there's limited resources, and being a victim of that atmosphere and dying, basically. So I thought that was interesting. And I don't know, they also briefly mentioned like being a product of the 80s and how that's influenced them to today, and kind of bringing that in today's culture and how it's impacted them. But it's weird because like there's a lot of their tracks are very like up tempo and like you just want to listen to them during a party, but I do respect how they bring in certain things that are impactful and are important.
Right.
So it's not just
there
party.
is a lot of depth to them. Outside of the beat, like every song on this album is a banger, basically.
Oh yeah.
There's no point where it dips down so low that it kind of slows the album down. It's almost like it's just a continuous rise in terms of the production just rising and getting crazier and more cinematic, and it's just constantly taking it up to another level.
When they were releasing this album, what were you expecting? Given, because I mean they've been talking about this album since last year.
Yeah.
And then things change of what's going on right now with the protests and everything. Killer Mike delivered a fantastic speech.
Yeah. Well, they finished this album last year.
Because I mean, like
I tried not to have any expectations. I knew they wouldn't stray too far from the Run the Jewels sound. But I didn't think about it too much. I wasn't expecting anything. I expected them to kind of do the same, stay in the same lane that they've been in, which I feel like they have with RTJ4. They just kind of brought it to another level. They stayed in their lane, but they fine-tuned a lot of things. They made it a little bit more cinematic. They applied a loose concept to it. So they just changed a few things around that make it different enough where you're like, oh shit, this sounds new and different, which I like a lot.
Yeah, because I was curious, because you and I, we were texting a little bit about, how you mentioned some artists are probably keeping their projects back because of everything that's happening right now. So it kind of went through my mind before this album dropped of like, I wonder, even though you guys have been talking about it for a while, like, are you going to kind of maybe tweak a couple things, maybe delay it a little bit because it's going on?
Well, they did the opposite.
And they dropped it early.
Yeah, they dropped it early because I think they know they have certain things in this album that do relate to today and will apply some context for people, and they tell their own stories in here, and they talk about more overarching themes and concepts that apply to today. And they knew that, and that's why they dropped it early.
Yeah. Well, I think when it dropped early, people were like, man, holy Kalama fuck. That's fucking crazy they dropped that early. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude, I fucking love this song.
That's the fourth track, by the way. Holy
it's
Kalama
crazy.
fuck.
I love the production. I love the beat change. I thought LP went crazy on this again. When he says, I'm the decider, you're evil eyes. I piled driver, provider for liars. The sleep depriver, the nick of time. Mercy killed denier in my prime. I'll kill the mood. I'm a rudeness MacGyver. I'll slap a yapper from the acne to the tooth. Bone fiber. I'm liver. Like, those are just crazy rhymes to put
That's
together.
the thing, is that they're just crazy rhymes. They're not.
Yeah.
It's not saying anything. It's a lot of words to say, not much. So that's why, like, I'm impressed, and it's like it's catchy and it's fun to listen to. But like, what are you telling me when you're putting all these words together? So
Well, I think if we looked at the verse as a whole, I think he does have a point, but I was just pointing out his rhyme scheme.
no, his rhyme scheme's great, and
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. But
Yeah.
it's like, can't anyone just put a bunch of words together? Like it, I'm looking for. I always want content.
Yeah.
and I know that not every artist does that.
Yeah. Well, I
It's
think he
just
does give a lot of content, maybe just not in that verse.
Maybe just not in that verse, but when
Yeah.
I listen to, when I listen to a lot, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I
Killer
mean,
Mike does. He gives some content in here. He talks about how he used to sell drugs and saying that it was dumb and ignorant, and he doesn't understand why rappers still glorify it.
So I mean, and then Killer Mike's first verse: the law defier, non-complier, the death defier, the Mike Myers murder rapper for hire. Like in that, there's a lot of rhymes in that. But the law defier, non-complier, he's not compliant with law enforcement, and probably with all the shit that he's been through, he's probably detoured from death quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, okay, that's cool. There's a lot of rhymes in there, but like that makes sense. The Mike Myers murder rapper for hire, he's killing all these other rappers out there.
Yep.
Totally get it. So that's where it's like, I like when a bunch of rhymes are put together, that's like, oh, that's clever. Like it's a bunch of words, but it also like makes sense. I was looking for where LPs was, but you know, LP's fun to listen to. But it just didn't tell me much. But I mean, the whole yapper thing is like, yeah, he just punches someone in the mouth and it rattles their skull. So like, I do respect that. It's cool. But yeah. Have you seen Clockwork Orange?
Yes.
What'd you think of it?
It's a great movie.
Weird.
It's super weird. Yeah. But
Very
that's
weird.
Stanley Kubrick. I mean, he makes weird as shit.
So I don't know. I just, in the song too, I can't remember the lyric, but you get a hint of him like them attacking hipsters. And when
Yeah.
I think of Clockwork Orange, I'm going to think of hipsters because it's not. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, but it's not a great movie. It's just like one of those movies that you see because of the title.
Yeah.
But they've referenced that in the track, and yeah, I put that up to this point. I'm still not getting anything content wise. As one of my notes, but you know.
Well, I mean, Killer Mike does when he's talking about him used to being a drug dealer, and then kind of be like, "No, that's dumb, and we don't need to glorify that in raps." Which he talks a little bit more about that in some other songs, but which we'll get to. But yeah, it's still, to me, this is being more like a movie or a TV show of entertainment, and it's action oriented, and it's in your face, and it's loud, and it's crazy, which I enjoy. Like there's entertainment value in that.
I also like the entertainment.
Yeah. So speaking of entertainment, which movie do you prefer, Goonies or E.T.?
Wow. I'll probably lean Goonies.
Yeah, you're a
It's been
Goonies
minute.
guy?
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've seen E.T., but you know, Goonies is a classic.
Yeah.
think
Gotta
it's-
love Goonies.
Yeah. When was the last time you watched E.T.?
Oh man, it's been a long time since I was a kid.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time.
Yeah, so that's the next track is Goonies versus E.T. Yeah, another dope track. I like the production a lot on this one. I'm not entirely sure what the title has to do with the song. I didn't quite get that.
I didn't either. There were so many things. I feel like for me, there were so many things I picked out of the song that the title became irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I like in Killer Mike's verse. And so I was first going to just write down the verse verbatim, but then as I was like trying to put it down to my own words, I ended up using most of it anyways. But he talks about how there is no revolution that is televised and digitized. You've been hypnotized and Twitterized by silly guys.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other line too, where he's calling out folk for not doing enough woke people that claim to be woke for not doing enough action. And between those two, it's like, this isn't what's going on right now. There's not. I don't even know how I want to put that, but I really like how he put it. And maybe I'll just leave it at that. I really like that line, and take with it what you can.
Yeah, it's a powerful line. I thought LP went to like a more larger viewpoint, and his verse is pretty dark. He says, "Be alarmed, I'ma harm what I can, and then dash. Fuck y'all, got another planet on stash. Far from the fact of the flames of our trash. This is not snow, it's ash, and you gotta know." I thought it's really dope that he brought up like, hey, we don't have another planet to go to. This is the only planet we have, and all we're doing is creating trash, and we're burning things, and there's just ash around us.
That's funny because I also saw like a metaphorical aspect of that, of people kind of being, let's say you're upper class and you're looking at the lower class, the middle class, and like, well, you guys have your issues, like I'm fine over here, I don't really care what happens. To me, I kind of saw that as like a me versus you and your problems that don't affect me. I think you all need to figure that out. So I kind of saw it as that one too.
Right.
But Mike also touching on, all of that just being, calling out the like woke people of like, this is, you have to get up and do something along, with that of,
right. You can't just say you're woke.
Can't just say that, and you have to do some action. Yeah. And, just like how people are still celebrating people, I think of Christopher Columbus or whoever else we still hold those people to, we still celebrate these people, but not the people that were affected by that.
Yeah. And I loved Killer Mike's, one of his, I think it's his last verse, when he references a bunch of hip hop albums. He says, "In the Terror Dome, leave me alone as I soliloquize." I can't even say that.
Soliloquy, but
he says soliloquize.
I don't know if that's the actual plural way of saying.
"Leave me alone as I soliloquize. This is licensed ill with a license to kill. This is N-word with an attitude in Beverly Hills. Heavy build with a pocket full of treasury bills. Got a fire, high temper, find it hard to chill." So in the first line, he references Public Enemy, Terror Dome. Then he references BC Boys with License to Ill. Then he references NWA, but they're in Beverly Hills. And I think, I think that's all the references. But I just thought it was dope that he referenced those classic hip hop groups, kind of comparing putting Run the Jewels with Public Enemy, BC Boys, NWA, those legendary hip hop groups.
Yeah, they covered a lot. And, I don't know, like going in to the next track, it almost continues in the stuff that they're covering. So the next track is Walking in the Snow, and featuring Gangsta Boo. And I can't even tell you the last time I even heard of her. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty much just with Run the Jewels.
Yeah, and I think that LP does a great job of setting the preface for the track. He begins talking about oppression and how people are targeted, and similar to from our playlist, how people are being caged. Once one cage is full, they move on to the next one, which Mike elaborates on later on too. Yeah. So it's kind of like, hey, we got these people rounded up. Now we're gonna move on to the next set of people and start profiling them and getting them. And when Mike hops on the mic, he goes in on a bunch of different things here.
Yeah. Oh, this is Killer Mike on another level. And the way he raps about this, it just puts it in front of you in such a simple way to understand and to get, and it makes you think a lot about what he's saying. and he does it in a great way. When he says, "But truly the travesty, you've been robbed of your empathy, replaced it with apathy. I wish I could magically fast forward the future so then you could face it and see how fucked up it'll be." That's a really deep and powerful lyric.
It is. I mean, as he's talking about that stuff, he's talking about the school to prison pipeline. And he mentions how, generally people with low test scores wind up. I mean, it's no surprise. People that we've grown up with that didn't do well in school, they tend to find a life in crime and doing stuff. Not to say that people that are straight edge don't find a way to get busted, but typically these people that find their way in prison have grown up in some type of situation. And I don't know, you can make the argument that it can start in school because you're already not doing well there.
Yeah, and when he says in lines like you've been robbed of your empathy, it's like why don't we have empathy for those people that were not given the proper education? We look at them as losers or dumb or less than, but we don't have empathy for how they got into that situation, how they're born into that situation. They didn't choose to be there.
And I think our society does a great way historically of dividing people and kind of showing like, well, there's a difference between you and them. And I'm going to do a transition to the next song based off of the last part of this song, is because he mentions all of us serve the same masters. All of us nothing but slaves, but I'm sure opportunity is knocking. It's probably I really like that line. I'm not sure opportunity is knocking is probably the law. And it's just it made me think of man being so low where it's like, yeah, man, like there's just really nothing to look forward to. And it's probably the law at the door. But as he mentions, all of us serve the same masters. We can transition to the next song of Just, where that song, man, let me ask you, you have an education. I have an education. You recently got your master's, correct? I have my bachelor's. You have your bachelor's as well, too. Is Killer Mike calling us a slave to these educational institutions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We try to master, in the hook by Pharrell, or the chorus, when he says we master academics. We are, because we're in a system set up where, hey, if you're not a master of something, you're not going to get anywhere. But really, while you're trying to master something, the institution is really the master, because they're taking your money and they're putting you down a certain pathway of their choosing. So we are really slaves to the whole system.
We're really tied to it, and we're tied to it forever. So I mean, you don't have to say any numbers, but I'm going to assume you have a debt that you're working off having done your master's. Someday you are going to want to buy a house. That's another debt that you're going to have to accrue and work off. So it's kind of saying, in terms of education, it's kind of saying that, we're raised to think, oh, we're really good at this. I'm going to pursue this.
Right.
And, when I was talking with my brother, it sucks because when he graduated with his bachelor's, it's like he made an extra $2 at his job. And of course you have to find a new job, which is hard to do. But, there's that, in between time of making sure you have enough to find, to pay for your things and everything. But now that he's only making $2 more, he's in the hole because he went to school for what he wanted to do. We both went to school for what we wanted to do. Fortunately, I grew up poor, so I didn't have to pay back a whole lot of loans. But even still, if I had to do that, my girlfriend has to do that. It's a long thing. I had my appendix ruptured. I have to pay that. I'm a slave to the medical institution because
And not only that, we're all slaves to just money in general.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main points of the song is, look at your dollar bill like it's a slave master on your dollar.
And that's if you're working for it or if you're working to pay someone else off or something.
Well, there's so many ways you can look at it. I mean, if you look at it literally, all the presidents on your dollar bill were slave masters. And now we glorify them. Now we idolize them. We put them on dollar bills that we see every day, that we live and die by. So yeah, it's a crazy thing to think about. And I love that Pharrell and Zach De La Rocha are on this. Like, this is a crazy combination, but Pharrell comes in with a really smooth hook and chorus that's really catchy. And I'm not familiar how familiar you are with Zach De La Rocha and Rage
I'm
Against
not
the
at all.
Machine. So this song perfectly fits Zach De La Rocha and his music and what he talks about. He's extremely political, and he's been singing about this stuff since the early 90s. So he fits perfectly on this song. One of my favorite verses is by Zach. He says, "So I'm questioning this quest for things as a recipe for early death threatening, but the breath in me is weaponry. For you, it's just money." So when he says, "I'm questioning the quest for things," he's talking about, like, why are we on this quest to acquire material things? Why are we doing that? Where did that come from? Who's telling us to do that? Where's the pressure coming from? But the breath in him is weaponry. For just speaking out against these things is like a weapon against it. But for most people, it's just money. We look at money as the end all be all.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the
Surviving.
that's the thing that's going to take us out of a dark spot. But also, if we're in a top spot, that's the thing that's going to take us from that. So I mean, money is definitely key in those things. So it's a hard kind of concept to want to let go and be like, yeah, let's just live free. And
Yeah, I mean, you should definitely listen to Rage Against the Machine if you want, like, because they speak out about so many things that are going on right now, but they're doing it in the early 90s. You know, it's very much relatable. And Zach, Rage Against the Machine, they're...
Did you say Rage Against the Machine? Or?
Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, I've listened to them. I thought you said something else.
No, yeah, Rage Against the Machine.
Oh.
Yeah. So you know Rage.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were talking about Zach and something else. And I was like,
Yeah,
nah.
well, he's the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine.
My bad.
Yeah, but he's done some solo stuff.
Zach
He
from
was
Rage
supposed to
Against
put out a rap album in the early 2000s, and LP was supposed to produce some of it. He was supposed to be like the executive producer, something like that. But it never came out. He did release a couple songs. One of them was with KRS-One. He put out a song with DJ Shadow, but it just never turned into a full project. So we're still waiting on that.
You hear about the dude that got ripped because he found out that Rage Against the Machine is actually very political and was just like, I'm not listening to their music anymore.
Right.
And it's like, yo, but what did you think what do you think they were raging against? What do you think the machine
Right.
is?
Yeah.
What do you think they were talking about? So
Yeah.
I had one of their albums, but this is the thing is I had it when I was 14 or 15. Battle for LA, I think it was.
Battle for Los Angeles.
Battle for Los Angeles. And I liked it. I really liked the sound, but I would need to listen to it at 30 to know what they were talking about. Because that's not what I was listening
I didn't
to
know a
back
lot
then.
about what they're talking about because I was listening to them when I was in elementary school and middle school and high school. It wasn't until about high school that I started understanding what they're talking about, which is they're one of the reasons why I started looking into police brutality and injustice. That was kind of the starting point for me, was listening to Rage. So yeah, going into the next track, Never Look Back.
The main message I got from that is like the present is absolute, and I was like, man, that's deep right there. But the message is like, if you get bitter, you'll never get better, and never look back because you will get bitter. I may have messed that up just a little bit, but it's kind of the same message.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think of it as looking at what you have instead of looking at what you don't have, which is very critical. I was just having a conversation with one of the kids I work with where, we're all getting fed up in this pandemic. But, it's like, well, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And, no one wants to hear what I had to say in a sense, but he was cool with it. But it's like, yo, man, like it's different times, and we gotta look at like what we can do. Like you can still reach out to friends. Granted, it'll be over Zoom or whatever else, but you still can do that. You can still walk around. You can't walk around downtown or go to the mall, but it's like you can go and discover your neighborhood and find out side streets that you didn't know. That's what I did. So that's kind of one of the things I took from this song.
Yeah, I thought LP said some really important stuff. He said, "Low on the smokes, grab another pack, go. Pop smoke too when playing piano. Pops, I'm you. It's funny how that go. Mom, you too. I never could drink slow." So he's talking about his own addictions and how he got that from his parents, and how that affected him growing up. Because he smoked cigarettes and he drank, heavily. And I'm sure as he got older, he's like, why am I addicted to these things? And then he looks back to how his parents influenced him, whether they're trying to or not to. It was just what he grew up with and what he was surrounded by influenced him to have his own issues with substances. So he's being really vulnerable and talking and opening up about that, about being addicted to something. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, I don't think he's blaming them. He's just pointing out, hey, I'm just like you, Dad and Mom. I have these addictions, and he's just he's confronting it.
So then he can settle with it and move on with it too. But because it's as they said, the present is super important. That's the here and now. Mm-hmm. And that's what
looking forward. Yeah, and the way this song ends is very much about looking forward with gratitude. It says, you can't go forward and you can't go backward. The past, the present, the future, all irrelevant. The only thing that matters is gratitude. Gratitude is everything. Time is nothing. So if you have gratitude towards your life in the present, time, the framework of time doesn't mean anything. The past, the future. If you are gratitude for now, all that goes away. You don't have to have anxiousness about the future, and you don't have to have depression about the past.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to agree. The way I'm thinking of is, if I look at my life in retrospect, it's like kind of been through a lot. Whether if it's you've been in a homeless shelter, you've moved a bunch of times, you've had to relocate, and those times sucked. But at the same time, like I am who I am today. And without those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am today. Mm-hmm. So that's where I have gratitude for the person that I am, because you look towards, how can I help other people with those things? How is that helping me deal with things that come up today? Like everything that happened in the past helps me with everything that I have to do today. And anything that I can deal with today helps shape my future. Yeah. So that's in a good place. So that's where I kind of read the whole gratitude of like, you just kind of look at the whole big picture and appreciate what you, going back full circle, what you have and not what you don't have.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's a great song. That was one of their more, personal songs where they open up about themselves and how they grew up, which I thought was really cool.
I think this album may have incited more thought for me than it was like them personally. Like I kind of just taking pieces of what was said in each of their songs and then what that made me think about. I think that's kind of the takeaway for me so far.
Yeah, I can see that. So next is The Ground Below. Another song about them kind of opening up about their personal beliefs or what they believe in. So when Killer Mike says, not a holy man, but I'm moral in my perversiveness, so I support the sex workers unionizing their services.
That was a bomb right there.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I thought it's dope. He's being honest about his morals and what he believes in. He's saying I'm not holy, but he recognizes his taste for women who sell their bodies, where he supports that and he's for it, and not in a bad way. He does it morally. He's like, hey, they're sex workers who deserve to be paid and to unionize and to receive healthcare benefits and all that stuff that you get with a normal job.
Yo, when the Super Bowl, anytime the Super Bowl comes to town, prostitution goes up. It shoots through the roof. And it's one of those things where like prostitution is not, it's so secret, but we know it's out there. I mean, even around here, you have people from Oakland getting busted in Santa Rosa at a Motel 6 because they're pimping girls out. And it's just one of those, like, if that's, I feel like it's a slippery slope, but like if that's a way of life, like why not unionize it? And I feel like that's where
Right.
Killer Mike is coming from. So that one kind of caught was like, oh, that's a what, because it's in our. I don't know if it's our country. I don't know if it's the culture. I don't know if it's our families. But sex is just really something we don't talk about. It's really taboo.
No.
So when you talk about sex, it's one thing. But when you talk about unionizing sex workers, it's like, holy
Right.
shit, holy clamafuck, what did you say? So I just kind of made me think about that for a second. I was like, man.
Yeah.
But I think some of the points I got from that one were, I like that you may not support me, but I'll survive. And I don't remember whose verse I caught that from. But it's kind of like being independent and, I'm not always going to have that backing. People may not will disagree with me, but I got to keep going. I got to be my biggest
You're
fan.
not going to let someone else dictate what you do. And another one of those lines along that concept is opinions don't matter. Stick to your plan.
That's
If they
what
judge, still don't budge.
That's what I had next.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if they judge you, who gives a shit? Like,
Yeah.
still don't sway from what you want to do or where you're going. Stick to your plan. So yeah, those are great lyrics, great ideas to pull from this, which leads to
Pulling the pin.
pulling the pin from the grenade on the next track. Kind of a darker song again. LP, like you've said, his lyrics can be a little abstract or hard to understand on the first listen, but definitely I agree with you that they're hard to understand when you're listening to it, especially the first go round. But for me, when I read his lyrics, I get it more. I'm able to understand what he's trying to say. So when he says, "Eat your heart out, fiction fan. Truly the truth is the stranger document." And I feel like there's a lot in there in just that one line of, we think fiction is stranger than reality, but it's not.
And
We've all heard that saying, reality is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, and that's the sad part is that like the reality is, as you said in that line, like it is the scarier part. Like if you feel like we're living a lie, and what's really going on is scary.
Yeah.
And I think what's relating to what's happening now, it's scary and crazy when you bring that to someone's attention and they're just like, nah, man, like I don't know what you're talking. You're in a different world. I don't know what you're talking about. That's not happening. It's different.
Yeah. It's it's kind of a dark take on the world of just like, hey man, there's a lot of crazy shit that's going on, and writers can't even dream up these crazy things that happen in the real world. We can't even think of it. They just happen, and then now we have to live in it. So it's a pretty dark take on the world, and of course this was written before everything that's happening right now.
We need to stop predicting the future with everything.
Right. Yep. And then Killer Mike has some interesting lines about religion. He says, "My pastors say God has promised us paradise. Live a good life. It is pivotal. I promised my mama that I would stay honest, but I wanted all in the physical. And promise I'm honest, I'll probably be punished because keeping that promise too difficult." So he's basically saying, my pastor is telling me, hey, just live a good life, and you'll get into heaven. Don't be taken in by the pleasures and the desires of man. Listen to the word of God. But as people, as humans on earth, we desire we desire material things. We have desires for a lot of things that aren't so good for us. and he's being honest. He's like, hey, I'm gonna be punished because I don't know if I can promise that to live a good life like my pastor is telling me to. So really interesting. I feel like Killer Mike has such a with the way he grew up. I'm sure he has a lot of not battles, but he probably goes back and forth with a lot of things in terms of morals and religion and how he lives his life and what he believes.
I don't know if this is immediately touching on religion, but through the chorus, it mentions, and at best, I'm just getting it wrong, and at worst, I've been right from the start. And I kind of think of the Bible and the followings from there.
Yeah.
With that, but I really like that touch because it's almost not contradictory, but just different. Of wait a minute, at best you're wrong, and at worst you've been right from the start. So, kind of a touch on following a religious avenue.
Yeah, it's a really cool song. I thought, they bring up a lot of interesting points. So with that, we finish off with a few words for the firing squad, Radiation.
This one got pretty deep too, and it touches on a lot of areas. I like how Mike talks about needing to be a better husband and father when people tell his wife that he can really make an impact. And it's really about standing up. All in all, it's about standing up to the powers that be and saying, fuck you.
Yeah. It's a very cinematic song. It definitely feels like a movie or a really well-produced TV show. It's it builds up. It's climactic. Like I was saying earlier, I feel like this whole album is like just constantly building up towards something. And then it finishes really strong. But it finishes in the way where it's not the end. It's actually just the beginning.
Yeah, it's like
which I really like how they did that.
Yeah, they're right. It's definitely, as you mentioned, with the end, like they're riding off into the sunset, like kind of like, okay, another day is kind of done. We're off, but you don't know, but that another adventure is about to happen.
Right.
And I don't know, like I was saying, like with Mike's stuff, like I just like that touch of, we don't need another martyr. I need you to do these things. Did you catch a Chappelle special that just dropped? The 8 minutes, 46 seconds?
No, I haven't seen that.
It was a good one, but, in it he brings up Don Lemon, and he talks about how Don Lemon calls out all the, all the celebrities and asking, like, what are you guys doing? You need to be heard. And Chappelle calls on that, and he's like, yo, like, we don't need to say anything right now. Like, it's the voice of the streets right now, and they have this. There's nothing that I can do right now or need to do that they aren't doing already. So it's like, I'll support them and everything, but they got this now. And he talks about in his stuff, like, I've been saying all this stuff for years and, nothing's really happening. But now you got the streets' attention and they're upset, so you can deal with them now. But it just kind of made me think a little bit of that of, take him acknowledging I'm going to take a step back, like the streets have it. Where Killer Mike's talking about, his wife's like, they don't need another hero. Like, I need you to do these things. So kind of saying there's been a lot of focus in some areas, but you really need to focus at home so things don't get out of control here. There's always going to be, it's almost saying that there's going to be chaos somewhere. But if we're going to take the lesser of two evils, I'd prefer that there weren't any chaos in our immediate family and stuff and let whatever's happening out there happen. Not that you aren't acknowledging that, dealing with it, but make sure you keep home in mind too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I thought it was a great way to end the album. It makes you feel like restarting it. It makes you want to revisit the album again with the way it ends. And I think they did an amazing job with tying it all together with the loose concept of it being a TV show. They're their main characters. And you feel like you just went through a crazy, like you said, adventure with them. And now you're like, oh, I'm ready for the next one. Like, what's going to happen next? You want the sequel already.
It's almost like how movies, they have their intro, they have their climax, and then their ending. I mean, we mentioned earlier that this album, it starts off very upbeat, up-tempo. But I just realized, because I do listen to the album as we talk, And this last track, it is it's not up tempo, and it's very dark, and it's very low key. But you almost wonder. I don't think there's going to be a RTJ 4-5 or anything like that, part 2 or anything. But I mean, in terms of you describing it as the cinematic event, it definitely, and they're writing off. You kind of wonder if it'll pick back up where they left off, kind of melancholy, and then go back up from there. So you do get a feel. I feel like it was a good transition. Like I didn't feel like it just, like the Babies album kind of went all over the place. This one started up tempo, started to, as it was up tempo, integrate a lot of important elements that are happening and important themes, and then kind of slowed you down and then ended you with this. And I thought it did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you knew this, but they recorded some of this with Rick Rubin at his studio. So they kind of worked with him a bit.
Man, now that you say that, I can hear that in some of the tracks, some of the kind of rock themes.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if he had any influence on the production or if Rick Rubin helped with the concept or what he did, but they recorded with him for part of the time at his Shangri-La Studios in Malibu, where Kendrick has been working on stuff with him, and there's been a lot of artists that have recorded there. But I just think that's crazy that LP and Killer Mike working with Rick Rubin, because LP is such an underground, grimy artist. He's never had this much notoriety before, and he owned Def Jux, which is an independent record label, and he signed artists that were super underground, like A$AP Rock, and Del the Funky Homo Sapien put out an album with them. Murs put out an album with them. So many great underground artists, but none of them ever reached a height with Def Jux and LP. For him to be noticed by Rick Rubin, I think is crazy, and for him to work with that level of a producer.
I mean, at the same time, like if you have enough money, are you really going to be turned away?
I don't think they're. I don't know if it's necessarily a money thing. I think my guess is that Rick Rubin invited them to come work over there because he liked who they are. I can't picture LP and Killer Mike reaching out to Rick Rubin and be like, we need to work with Rick Rubin. They're not that kind of artist, I don't think. That's my guess. I could be totally wrong.
Well, if you haven't heard this album, you can get it for free, which is really cool because they've...
Right. Beyond streaming, you can get the actual download on your computer.
No reason why you
I don't
shouldn't
know
hear it.
if people should do that, but you can do it.
I do.
Definitely take advantage because
anti-Spotify.
when the internet goes away and your Wi-Fi goes away, which it will at some point.
Wow. Put on your 10 hats.
Yeah, you're not going to have any music to listen to. Because if you rely on streaming, it's all going to be gone. So that's why I make a point to buy physical music.
Weren't you on my case for not having Spotify?
Yeah, I'm saying I'm not saying don't download or buy music.
Now all of a sudden we're talking about how important tangibles are. Like I haven't said that before. Dude,
I didn't say you haven't.
Make up your mind.
I'm saying you should be doing both. You shouldn't be doing.
Oh, okay.
One of the. I'm not talking against Spotify. I'm saying your internet's going to go away at some point. So what do you do then?
That's why I want tangibles, man.
Yep.
So real quick, the PS5 being talked about, we're already in that realm of them creating diskless consoles. I don't like it.
Well, that's been around.
Oh yeah, with the Xbox, that's true.
They've been doing that.
I don't want, but I feel like with PlayStation, because I don't have an Xbox, but I feel like with PlayStation, it's like happening. Mm-hmm. So within the next 2 consoles, I'm gonna have to go digital, and I don't really want to do that. I like my tangibles. I like my CDs.
Well, keep your old systems.
I know.
Yeah. Save them. But yeah, thank you for tuning in to the Rap Thought podcast. Thank you for subscribing and liking us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher. Definitely hit us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're definitely active on there. Hit us up anytime. Let us know what you think. Let us know your thoughts. And we look forward to the next episode.
Oh yeah. We'll see you then.